Hey folks, MACT back, and I have an oil report. Well, not really an oil report. I have a gear lube report on a 2019 Ford Edge Titanium 2.0 Ecoboost all-wheel drive AAM clutched PTU. That's right. This is the first model year they started making the AAM PTU. So this is not going to correlate into your 2007 through 2018 PTUs. This is an all-new PTU that definitely operates differently than the other past PTUs. So even Blackstone Report says, hey, we don't have much data on these AAM PTUs, so I'm one of the first ones to start sending in gear lube samples on this new PTU for the Ford Edge and all the other Fords that they're putting this thing in since 2019. But we did use the Redline lightweight shockproof in it for 12,303 miles. That's where I wanted it. I wanted a 10,000 mile test, but I just couldn't get around to it. So, hey, I did it at 12,000. You know, when I went to go change the oil, I went ahead and jumped under there and did this too. But hey, we got the test, and that's all that counts. But yes, Blackstone says we haven't seen enough samples from these newer units to make reliable averages for them, so we'll rely more on trend across your oil changes to gauge wear. There's more aluminum, chrome, and iron in this sample than the first, but some of the metal could be from buildup over this longer interval. If the unit functions well, check back in 15,000 miles for another look at wear. Now, high insolubles are probably from the additives that's fallen out of suspension, and that's common for this type of oil. The viscosity tested slightly thin, the tan red 4.6. Now the Redline is essentially a thinner oil than what they're probably looking at. Now, I'm thinking there's some confusion on the gear lube too, because I don't think they're correlating the gear lube to what the owner's manual says it has to be as far as an 80-90 type weight differential. I think they're thinking 75 whatever, 140 or 50 or whatever it is. So but they did change it down to a lighter gear lube. But that being said, you know, the Redline, this is only the second test, and the first test for the PTU was not stellar either. It was a brand new PTU, so it's going to have all sorts of different funky stuff going on in it. But we're going to concentrate on what the Redline did at 12,303 miles. The car has currently over 21,000 miles on it now. So you know, and I changed this back in March. I'm just now getting around to it. But the aluminum was at 17, and their past universal averages were 10. Like I said, they don't have much data on this, so take that all with a grain of salt till we can establish something going on with this. The chromium was at 6, and the universal averages are 1. The iron was at 323, and the universal average for past PTUs was 99. Now keep in mind, my past number was 176 at just 8,800. Now that is another case of, you know, where are we going with this as far as what we're doing. And the copper was at 11, but hey, the previous oil gear lube test was at 28, and the universal average is 14. So, you know, what's going on? How's it working out? We got some improvement on you know, several aspects here, but then again we have, you know, not so good improvement. So we're trying to figure it out. Plenty of time. It's under warranty. But anyway, we got lead at 0, and guess what? Lead is usually 7 universal averages. A tin was at 0, and tin is usually a 1 on universal averages. Molybdenum was 1,238, whereas the previous oil sample was just 10, and the universal averages for that were 3. So Redline tosses a lot of Molly B in there. Yeah, they toss a ton of Molly B in there. Nickel is at 0, universal averages are 1. Manganese was at 27, universal averages are 15. But the factory fill was at 37. So, hey, you know, that's where it's at. And then what do we got here? Silver. Silver was at 0. Titanium was at 1. Let's see, potassium was at 22, and the previous oil sample was at 21. So, pretty consistent in nature on that. The boron was at 98, and the previous sample was at 91. So, you know, staying consistent there. The silicon was 151, and the previous sample was at 9. So it's probably got a high silicon additive to it. Sodium was at 88 for this testing sample, and the previous was at 56. So, calcium. Now, this is where Redline really jumps in there, and this is where we have this statement from the oil lab that there are high insolubles in there. Redline uses a ton of calcium. A ton. I can't describe it any other way. But the calcium that was in this gear lube was 26,625 parts per million compared to the original fill of 66. That's right, 26,000. So, yeah. That's why it still came out blue, and the reason it is blue is because of the high amount of calcium that is in the gear lube. The magnesium was at 149 in this test, and the previous one was at 21. And then phosphorus was at 1206, and the previous oil change or gear lube was at 1419. So they used a little bit more of the old phosphorus in there. Zinc was at 12. And then previous oil gear lube was at 45. Barium was at 4, and the previous gear lube was at 30. And the universal average is generally 9 for gear lubes. So that's where we're at, and that would also account for why some of these other numbers are, you know, pretty decent in the long run. But the SUS viscosity at 210 degrees Fahrenheit came out at 88.5, vice the 99 to 140. Okay, so yes, it is definitely down about 10 points as far as the viscosity goes, but here's the catch. The viscosity of the factory gear lube was at 64.2. So that means that the Redline is actually slightly thicker than the factory gear lube that it came with. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. And then the CST viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius is 17.61, and they're saying that it's supposed to be between 20.1 and 29.7, but the previous gear lube thickness was 11.38. So the Redline is actually thicker than what was filled with. So, you know, is that going to hurt it in the long run? Maybe. Maybe I have to go down to something thinner than the Redline lightweight shockproof. Don't know. I'm going to see how my testing turns out in the future, and I may have to change to something a little bit closer to the viscosity of what's going on here. So, but the flash point was at 395, vice the 385 for the last gear loop. So, flash point definitely higher. Now, insolubles was at 1.6. So what do we have as far as insolubles? There's no dirt or any other garbage in here. Essentially, insolubles they're finding is from the high calcium and everything else that's in the Redline, and I think that's what's accounting for all that. But the TAN, total acid number, yes, there's nothing acidic about this stuff. That calcium in there just cleaned it good. And it's at a 4.6, whereas the previous gear lube was at a 2.2. So that ought to tell you what the Redline's doing on the inside. And I'm running this Redline in my AAM PTU on my Ford Edge, so you all have a good idea what's going on. And I will tell you, if I see a trend then I may switch to something else. But right now I am content with what's going on with this thing. And if I start going up in numbers, then it's another time to do stuff. But right now I'm considering that it's doing its job. We got consistency for the most part. And again, this is an AAM PTU. This is not the made in Mexico variety that you all have on your 2007 through 2018 Ford Edges. So totally different PTU, therefore different numbers can be coming out of this because different manufacturer, different materials, who knows, but it is definitely designed differently as far as it runs. So time will tell, folks. I'm not at the least bit concerned at this point, but I will note one thing, and I will note that when I did fill it, I put in 14.7 essentially fluid ounces, like the 2019 owner's manual that I have right here said 17.4 fluid ounces to fill it up. And this last time I filled it up with Redline, instead of putting 17.4, I ended up putting gear lube in there, the Redline, until it overflowed out of the fill hole. Now, what did I put into it? I put almost 26 fluid ounces in it. Now, I'm going to wait and see if I got leaks from overspill from the breather tube or anything else, but I ultimately ended up putting nearly 26 fluid ounces into that PTU before it started overflowing. So I'm going to say that some of my wear here is because I don't think it had enough gear lube in it. The owner's manual says 17.4, but I don't think that was enough. So I filled it up to basically it started to dribble out, and that took 26 ounces. So we're going to see what this next one does. I got my fingers crossed. I think with more gear lube in there doing its job, it's probably going to have less wear. And the 17.4 I don't think was nearly enough gear lube to do it. So can we name this a worst case scenario, being the fact that it had what I considered too little gear lube in it? I don't know, but I'm not going to follow the owner's manual after this because that was way too little as far as I'm concerned. So hey, the Redline did its job. It was so little that it had to work so hard. So we're just going to see what the next test shows us. And again, with more volume, we're going to have a lesser number in most aspects. So we'll see how it all works out. But that is a test for the Redline. I stress enough to you guys, I'm not concerned, so you shouldn't be either. I think it's doing its job, but again, I think there is a little bit of error on my side by not filling it up like I should have. So we had a high concentration and a low amount of oil, and that might have accounted for some of the higher levels that we're seeing here. But I'm thinking this next test will be a lot better than this one. If it isn't, then I'll tell you. But this is the truth that I got out of it. This is the oil report on it. So I just want you all to know that I'm not trying to hide anything from you. That's what the paperwork says. So this is MACTFORDEDGE, and hey, like, subscribe, join. You guys hit that thumbs up. Watch the videos, share them. Help me get the word out as far as the Ford Edge and everything else to other people in these informative videos on oil testing and gear lube testing, everything I do. Helps the algorithm. YouTube likes to see it, and then of course I can get a couple more duckies going there. But these oil testing, the views I get do not pay for the oil testing. So that's the way it is, you know, but I still give you the information. But that being said, my feet hit the floor today. I'm having a great day, and I want you to have a great day too. Band of One's got some great music, and Mercy Girl, she's ever present telling you what to do. So listen to her.
Thank you for watching MacT's videos, and remember to like and subscribe. This is a Mercy Girl production.